This is the B&O Sports Show with your hosts, Tanner Ballard and Garrett Otto. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the B&O Sports Show. I'm Tanner Ballard, and alongside me is Garrett Otto. Well, theoretically alongside me. We're not actually in the same room. But regardless, this is the third episode, the third podcast of the NFL/college football edition of the B&O Sports Show. Hey Garrett, I got a quick shout out as we start the podcast. Shout out to Leicester City in the Premier League. Leicester City played Chelsea over the weekend. Actually, it was on Monday, yesterday. And they won, they beat Chelsea, they beat the defending champions, and they have taken first place in the Premier League. I just want to throw back to last year in this day. Chelsea were in first place in the Premier League, and Leicester were in 20th. And today, this year, it's nearly flip-flopped. Leicester now in first, and Chelsea are in 16th. So man, if you don't watch the Premier League, if you're any bit interested in soccer, or even if you're not interested in soccer, I definitely recommend that you check out the Premier League. One of the weekends, Premier League games they're on NBC. Fun. It's been a great season. Yeah, you should definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's weird. It's man, I don't know. I think every sport has had kind of a weird year. It seems like there's a lot of changes happening so far this year. And it's obvious not only just in football where we've seen a couple of top teams struggle and a couple what we're not expect to be good teams rise up. I guess it's happening all around the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? We're jumping into the NFL. The past week, week 14, we're going to go ahead and recap some of that. So, we had a Thursday night matchup between the Arizona Cardinals and Minnesota Vikings. Now, I know last week we predicted that the Cardinals would win, and they did. They pulled it off, 23-20. I think that one was closer than we would have thought, Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, it was a close game. Minnesota ended up putting up just 4 more points than the Cardinals in the fourth quarter to make it a closer game than it was looking like before that fourth quarter. But I think everyone has kind of realized that Minnesota is a decent team. But yeah, you would expect a team like Arizona, who's been solid all year and has been, really one of the top teams in the league, to take care of Minnesota better than they did. In a way, it raises questions for me with the Cardinals because we saw them struggle against the 49ers. They didn't look good there. And they've had a lot of wins and a lot of, I guess, good wins, but then they've had some games where you have to look at it and you're like, why is a team that's top 5 in the league doing this when you would expect them to dominate teams like the 49ers? And even though the Vikings are good, expect them to put up, more than just 23 on them since their offense has been producing so much this year, and you'd expect them to beat them by more than just 3. And if it wasn't for a couple of deep passes from Carson Palmer, who's looked spectacular this year, he had a 65-yard pass to John Brown and a 42-yard pass to Michael Floyd. And then everything else is just Chandler Catanzaro doing his job. So it wasn't a very pretty game for the Cardinals. We'll see what they can do moving forward, but I think looking at some of the teams in the NFC that started off struggling but have really found their groove and are seeming to just really hit the ground running going into the playoffs, you kind of have to consider them to maybe be able to beat the Cardinals because they just haven't looked good going into it. And when we've seen in the past years, it's the team that is hot going into playoffs, not the one that has the best record.
Right, and right now, the team that's really hot is in Arizona's division. That's the Seattle Seahawks. All of a sudden, the Seahawks are turning it on. Russell Wilson is starting to throw he's starting to throw some crazy games, and they're starting to win. If we take a look at what happened to them over the weekend.
Yeah, they facing up against the Baltimore Ravens, man, and the Baltimore Ravens had a tough season so far. It only continued when they lost by 29. But a big loss for the Seahawks is Thomas Rawls as he goes out. Another big player to go out for them after they lost Jimmy Graham, and Marshawn is out for really an unknown amount of time right now. They're expecting him back at least by the end of the regular season. But when Marshawn went out, Thomas Rawls came in and filled that gap very nicely. He is actually currently 9th in the league in rushing yards with 830 and on only 147 attempts. So he was looking really, really good. And now it looks like DeJuan Harris is probably going to take the starting role, who played up in the north for your Green Bay Packers at one point. But that's not a strong running game. They're lucky that Russell Wilson's playing the way he is, or else there might be some questions. Yeah, that was a good win for them. He throws another 5 touchdown passes. Doug Baldwin, who before was called pedestrian and I think has carried that chip on his shoulder ever since, he's playing really well. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. So a lot of things are coming together for Seattle, and a lot of things are falling apart for the Ravens. I'm expecting Seattle to continue. They've got Cleveland this week, so that should be an easy win. But it definitely looks good for them as long as they can figure out the running situation, and Marshawn should be back soon. So I think Seattle's in a good spot.
Yeah, and they've got the momentum definitely going into the playoffs as of right now. Seeing that they can secure that wild card position, of course, which you definitely would assume they would. Let's see. Cam Newton dabbing his way through the Atlanta Falcons. That was a nonsense performance from the Falcons. Put up 0 points against the Panthers, so they dominated that game. They're still undefeated. They've definitely clinched their playoff spot by now. Heck, they deserve it. One of the big stories of the weekend, of course, Steelers and Bengals game. The Steelers, of course, beating the Bengals, but really, really bad news for the Bengals. Andy Dalton goes down with that, was it a thumb injury?
Yeah, he broke his thumb, and also for the Bengals, Tyler Eifert had to leave with concussion, so he's not a lock to play this week, which would hurt backup A.J. McCarron, hurt his chances of getting kind of into the flow of the game. He's still got A.J. Green, but Tyler Eifert has proven to be one of those guys that you can throw to, and he's going to catch everything this year. Man, do you think that this affects the Bengals' chances of, winning a playoff game first, but, making a playoff run also?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think a large part of their success this season came from Andy Dalton and Tyler Eifert. If Tyler Eifert is okay to come back after his concussion, that's that'll definitely be a help for A.J. McCarron. I just don't know that A.J. McCarron can step in to the role that Andy Dalton was playing. You take a look at some of Andy Dalton's stats. He's 13th in the league in passing yards. Now, that may not stand out to you as amazing, but he was getting the things done that the Bengals needed done. And, obviously that's why they're 10-3. So, I don't know. It'll be tough. We'll have to see what happens with A.J. McCarron stepping into that role. Andy Dalton had such an impact on the team, and, he's such a leader on the field that, I don't know, they definitely could struggle.
I think if they're able to get him back for the playoffs, they'll be okay, because although they haven't secured a playoff berth yet, I think it's pretty well known that they are gonna get in, just the way they're playing and their record right now, 10-3. They should be able to get in no matter what. So if Andy Dalton comes back for the playoffs and Tyler Eifert is okay, which he should be, it's only concussion, he should be back. If not this week, next week. So I think in the long run, it doesn't hurt them unless they rule Dalton out for the season, which is possible. But it's not as bad as I think it could be. For the Bengals.
No, he didn't need surgery, right?
No surgery. They announced that yesterday. that he
Yeah.
was cleared for that, so no surgery. That helps a lot. That means that he does have a chance to get back. But he looked good, man. He had 25 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. He had one of the higher quarterback ratings in the league. He was third, actually, in the league for quarterback rating, so it's a big loss for him, but it's not over for them, which I think a lot of people have been saying, and maybe what a lot of Cincinnati fans have been feeling is that it's over for them. Man,
Yeah.
speaking of over, do you think that Jacksonville's time as the worst team in the league is over after they put up 51 points on the poor Colts?
Yeah, who knows if that was, a fluke game for them, but I mean, they 51 points against the Colts. Now, the Colts have they've died down all of a sudden with the loss of Andrew Luck, and I think Matt Hasselbeck has come to realize that he is 40 years old. So, I don't know. Jacksonville, they've got, Blake Bortles is starting to play some pretty solid games out there. And, yeah, I think it's fair to say, that their time as the worst team in the league is over. But certainly they don't deserve to, or rather, should I say that I don't think they're out of the top 5 worst teams in the league yet. They've got a lot to prove until that happens.
I'd just like to add really quick. I mentioned earlier that Seahawks would be starting or possibly starting DeJuan Harris next week. It just recently came out, maybe a minute ago. Seattle released DeJuan Harris. They had signed Bryce Brown yesterday, so pending them adding another running back, it looks like Bryce Brown is going to be the starter unless they decide to go with Fred Jackson, but Fred Jackson seems like he's kind of too old to handling a starting role. That's just a tidbit of information as I get a correction in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, some convenient news, yeah. Hey, how about Khalil Mack's performance? 5 sacks as the Raiders take down the Broncos, Brock Osweiler and the Broncos. All of a sudden, this is really I think it's a stupid idea. All of a sudden, Khalil Mack goes in there, sacks Brock Osweiler 5 times, and then, the Broncos end up losing to the Raiders. And now all of a sudden, I keep seeing people calling for Peyton Manning to retake that starting role.
That's man, I just don't know if Peyton Manning is the right guy right now. He just can't do a whole lot. But interesting also that recently came out, Adam Schefter of ESPN reported that the Broncos are working out Ryan Lindley. So they're working him out today as well as Trent Richardson. Oh boy, Trent Richardson, poor guy. But
poor guy.
Man, if Ryan Lindley got signed, that's interesting news because Brock Osweiler hasn't been playing like crazy well. He won games, but he wasn't putting up like big stats, and now they're working out another quarterback. Now maybe that's just that they're going to roll Payton out for the season or something, and they need a backup.
Yeah, right.
But that does create a little bit of drama there, which never hurts.
Yeah, maybe it can up a performance from a quarterback. You never know. So that's an interesting situation. Like we said, the Raiders got that win. The Packers beat the Cowboys relatively comfortably. All of a sudden, James Starks and Eddie Lacy are coming out and showing up to be a 1-2 punch for the Packers. Mike McCarthy, by the way, he took back the play-calling duty for the offense in that game. So that was a big, I don't know if relief is the right word for Packers fans, but certainly going back to the old ways for the Packers, well, we ended up with a win, so we'll take it at that. Sunday Night Football, the Patriots beat the Texans. No big surprises there. Rob Gronkowski returned. And we had a Monday Night Football game last night. The Giants beats the Dolphins. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., pulled off. He had 2 touchdown receptions in the second half, which is pretty big for him. He has been a huge target for Eli Manning thus far in the season. Really important for that Giants team. So, shall we jump ahead into Week 15?
I like Week 15.
Yeah.
First, though, do you just really quickly, after that Odell Beckham Jr. performance, do you think that he is the best receiver in the league right now, even though he's so young? Do you think he's that guy?
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion to have. Defining the best receiver in the league, I think, is kind of a tough task, because there's so many different ways that you can define the best receiver in the game. I mean, of course, for the past couple of years, you've looked at Calvin Johnson from Detroit, who, as big as he is, he's Megatron. He catches everything. He's huge. You throw it up to him, he's going to grab it. But like you said, Garrett, of recently, Odell Beckham Jr., he's been making big-time catches. Right now, he's third in the league in receiving yards. And also, what he does after the play is really important. I think when you're considering who's the best receiver in the game, what they do after the play. Now, I don't know if you saw, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Odell Beckham Jr. can fly. I mean, he can fly. Because I remember him catching a nice little crossing pattern, and he had 2 safeties on him, maybe a corner, and he just took off, and he beat those guys for 40 yards to the end zone. So, I don't think there's another guy out there in the league right now who can do what OBJ can do. And, Garrett, consider Beckham's size. I mean, what is he, like 5'9"? He's not very tall.
Yeah, he's got the second most yards after catch in the league behind probably the number 2 wide receiver, Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
He's got 149 targets. He's got 100 receptions on 149 targets, so he really hasn't dropped many. He's catching 2/3 of the balls thrown his way. Or excuse me, no. Man, I was looking at Antonio Brown. Odell Beckham Jr. has 85 out of 142 targets, so he doesn't catch everything, but when he does catch it, he's a threat. I mean, he's proved that. It seems like every week, I get an update on my phone that Odell just took one for 60, 70 yards or whatever.
And he has some crazy celebration in the end zone.
Oh, yeah. Those Giants wide receivers, Victor Cruz started off. He really set the tone with the salsa.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Hey, you know what I like, though, from OBJ? He's a soccer fan, and so what I've been seeing recently is he's going and pulling off that classic soccer tradition after the game. He's signing his jersey, or he's doing something. He's exchanging jerseys with another player. I like that in the NFL. I think that's a good idea.
I don't get why more players don't do that. If I was a pro football player, if I was a pro player in any league, I'd be trying to collect some of the, so many players' jerseys, because you don't know how much time you have in that league, and these are some of the top athletes in the world. I would want to collect things from them. It's my opinion.
That's the coolest thing. To have a room in your house dedicated to all the jerseys that you've gathered throughout your time in whatever league you're in. That's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember seeing, I think you showed me a picture sometime. Man, I can't remember what it was. Some Spanish soccer player from Barcelona or something, and he posted a picture of all the jerseys he had collected over the years, and I mean, it was legends. It was just he had just some of the most famous soccer players in the world laid out, and I thought that was so cool. It was one of the cool sports pictures I've seen.
Yeah, if I remember right, that was Gerard Piqué.
That's what I was thinking it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Shakira's husband. Yeah, that was a pretty neat picture, and I think it's a really cool tradition, and like you said, I think it'd be pretty neat for some of the other players in all sorts of leagues to start doing.
I feel like maybe
seeing that the leagues don't fine them for what they do. I mean,
it's amazing. It's amazing that the league doesn't fine them for doing that. Man, where did we get lost? Week 15.
No
I feel like
that's right.
It's been a while. It's been ages.
It has been ages. You got any matchups that you're looking forward to in Week 15?
Week 15, I like the Chicago versus Minnesota game, although it'll probably be a disaster of a game just because it's the NFC North and something's going to go wrong. I like it on paper, at least. Jay Cutler, looked good for a couple weeks. He was like, hey, Bears fans, come on, I can do something.
I'm back.
And then he showed up again. So, real Jay Cutler came out, and, dude, man. Jay Cutler, I asked someone today, while I was at school if they would rather have Jay Cutler or Ryan Fitzpatrick as their quarterback, and the kid was a Bears fan, and I've never seen a stronger response to one of the questions I've asked him. It was immediately Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I don't disagree.
At least, like, if it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know that he's probably going to go do something really cool after his college career because he graduated from Harvard, so he's going to get, like, a cool job and create something. Jay Cutler, when he's done with football, he's just going to lay around. I picture Jay Cutler being that guy after, like, 10 years after he's retired, they, like, bring him back in studio for something, and he just weighs, like, 325, and he's just lumping around.
I mean, when he's got that like 4 o'clock shadow looking beard on him,
he just never looks happy. I don't know the last time I've seen Jay Cutler look happy during a game. I remember I was at a Bears Seattle game, and it was like 3rd and 22 or something, and they ran the ball to Matt Forte, and he takes the snap, hands it off to Forte. And I swear, like, Forte had taken 3 steps, and Cutler was just walking to the bench with this look on his face. Like, oh, like, I'm like, okay, Jay Cutler, come on. Like, it's 3rd and 22. Like, you're never going to get that. You just might as well take the yards and, like, punt it away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he's a negative influence on the team. But regardless, Chicago versus Minnesota, up in Minnesota. I think that should be an easy win for the Vikings. They look pretty good against the Cardinals. And coming off a long week, I think this one could actually get pretty rough for the Bears, in all honesty.
Yeah. Have you seen the Vikings' new stadium that's coming along? I think it's US Bank Stadium. Have you seen the pictures of that thing?
I haven't, but I know they were putting a lot of money into it.
They put tons of money into it. But man, it looks pretty sweet. I think it's going to be done. I think it's ready next season. But I mean, it's got like some you know what happened last time with the Metrodome, a little too much snow, and unfortunately it collapsed. But
that's so weird, dude. It's Minnesota. How would they not be prepared for that?
I know. But so, anyways, they are prepared for it now with this new stadium because the stadium, like the ceiling it's all glass or a glass-like material. It's see-through. But it's like angled, both. It's like 2-sided, but it's angled down so that the snow and ice and whatnot will just slide right off, or at least that's what they hope to do. But it's a huge stadium, like just a massive stadium, and it's really got a cool open air, just a really modern, cool design. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. That'll be neat. We get off topic, back on topic. Week 15. You mentioned the Bears and the Vikings. I'm going to mention the Broncos and the Steelers. That could be a good game. Of course, the Broncos coming off that loss to the Raiders, maybe looking for a little pick-me-up somewhere, hoping to get back on track. And the Steelers, of course, beating the Bengals. So that'll be a good matchup. I think that's probably the best matchup of Week 15. The undefeated Panthers and the Giants will play. That has potential, but with the way that the Panthers are playing, I don't think there's going to be much of a game there. Other than that, any final words on Week 15, Garrett?
Green Bay versus Oakland looks like a good game, in my opinion, as long as Derek Carr doesn't play like his brother anymore.
That could be a potential big game. And with the way that Khalil Mack played in that last game, and with the way that the Packers' offensive line has been playing in the past, now they had a pretty good game against the Cowboys this past week. So that could be a potential problem for Aaron Rodgers, but not worried about it. So, with that, I think we've wrapped up the NFL. I think you know what time it is.
What time is it?
That's right. It's time for the weekly rant.
Ooh,
that's right.
The weekly rant.
The weekly rant. Every week, one of us is going to rant about some particular topic in sports. Seeing that Garrett ranted last week about referees, it is my turn this week, and I've got an interesting little story here. Jump right into it. The NHL All-Star Game is coming up soon, and with the NHL, the way that they do their All-Star Games now, it's a fan vote to enter, to get players into the All-Star Game. The NHL thought, let's let the fans vote him in, because the fans will obviously want to see the best players, and we want to get them involved in the All-Star game because, let's be honest, not a lot of people are watching the NHL All-Star game. So, with that in mind, I think the plan backfired. The plan definitely backfired on the NHL because the man who leads the voting in the NHL All-Star game, as far as getting into it, is a man by the name of John Scott. Now, if you're from Chicago, like Garrett and I, you know John Scott pretty well. He was a Blackhawks player a couple of years ago, and he now plays for the Arizona Coyotes. Now, let me just tell you, John Scott, let's be honest, he doesn't deserve to be in the NHL All-Star game.
Oh, come on.
Hey, you know what? I gotta be honest here. John Scott is 6'8". He is tall, he's big, and basically his job is to go around and, run people into the boards and punch people in the face. Now, what's so great about him is he's like the funniest guy, and he's really just cool and fun and, enjoyable to be around off the ice. So that's why he's getting in, is because the fans love him so much. And, I think they think it's funny that a 6'8", non-skilled John Scott deserves to be in the NHL All-Star game. So, with that in mind, I just... The All-Star games in professional sports are just becoming... They're just becoming... I don't know what the right word is, to be honest. But they're just not as enjoyable as the past. Now, the NHL All-Star game, they're changing it up this year. They're doing a 3-on-3 tournament, if I'm correct. And, they're trying... Basically, what they're doing is they're realizing that in the past years it's not as popular as it should be, or, as they think it should be. So they're trying to switch it up to attract more fans. Now, this is the football edition of the BNO Sports Show. So what does that mean? That's right, the Pro Bowl. I think the NFL should do away with the Pro Bowl. I gotta be honest. The Pro Bowl is not as popular as it used to be. Frankly, it might have been popular back in the day, but nowadays it's just not as popular. Personally, I don't know if it takes away from what happened in the Super Bowl. Or, no, I'm wrong. Do they play the Pro Bowl before the Super Bowl now, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They play it like the week before, basically.
Right. So that almost makes it even worse. That makes people say, really, the Pro Bowl a week before the Super Bowl? Why do I even care? I'm trying to get ready for the Super Bowl. I'm trying to get pumped for the Super Bowl, and instead this Pro Bowl comes along. I mean, the NFL is not attracting the numbers that they want to attract for the Pro Bowl. I guess it's enjoyable maybe for the players. They get kind of a relaxing thing, but it's just not worth it. And in my opinion, they should just do away with it. It's just not as enjoyable. It's not worth watching. I mean, hey, if they can generate a little bit of revenue from it, by all means go ahead. But on a personal level, from a fan's perspective, I think the NFL should do away with the Pro Bowl simply because it's not as popular. It's not that fun to watch. I mean, what is it? Big teams, big name players scoring big time points, and you just end up with a score that's run up, and it's like the players aren't even trying. It's just not. It's not the exciting, normal intensity that you expect from a football game, and that you want to see as a football game, or at least that's what I want to see from a football game. So, listen, if it doesn't bother you, go ahead, watch the Pro Bowl, but sorry, I won't be tuning in this year.
I think the best part is that, they get to go to Hawaii. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I guess you could say it's a little vacation for the players, but not for the fans.
Yeah, and they've been talking about getting rid of it for so long. And it's like they just kind of keep trying to do something to get people to watch, but it just doesn't work.
It's not working.
I don't know. Good luck to them.
Yep. So that was the weekly rant. Now, we've got one last portion, as usual, of this episode. That is the college football portion. Now, let's go ahead and hop into the college football train here. Well, we only had one game this past weekend. It was, of course, the Army and Navy game. Now, Garrett, I don't know if you got the chance to tune into this one, but it turned out to be a much tighter game than a lot of people were predicting. Now, Navy, if I'm correct, they had a 12 or 13, consecutive years of beating Army. So, with with those kind of numbers, you expect Navy to come in there and win. But Army was pulling off some pretty crazy drives. They were scoring touchdowns, and unfortunately for them, they couldn't hold on. And Navy, led by their quarterback Keenan Reynolds, came back to win the game. Final score of 21-17. A lot of people were talking about how the possible reason why Navy didn't play as well as they have been playing in that game, or at least as they should have played in that game, is because of the distractions, I guess you could say, from their coach Ken Niumatalolo. That's a tough one. Rumored to be going to BYU, possibly. He was meeting with them yesterday, and I don't know. You know how it is with college football when you've got the coach possibly heading out the door, players get antsy, teams don't perform as well as they should. But regardless, Navy ends up getting the win.
That was a good game, and Navy, the armed forces aren't always known for putting together great teams, but Navy was a solid team this year. They were in the top 25 for a decent amount. So good for them. It's always a fun game to watch and ended up being a really good game, even though Navy's dominated it for the most part in the past 14 years now. Looking ahead, though, Tanner, we got college bowl season starting up right away.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up this week. There's a couple of, decent games with one really good game. Starting it off, Arizona versus New Mexico. Not probably the result of the season that Arizona was looking for going into it. Considering they were 6-6, can't be happy with that one. But they do make it into a bowl, which I guess they had during this day and age isn't too tough either. But they'll be looking to win that one against New Mexico. Ohio, Appalachian State, man, they've had a couple big upsets in their careers. San Jose State, and we got Arkansas State versus Louisiana Tech. Forgot to mention San Jose State versus Georgia State. But the big matchup of the day will be the 9-3 BYU Cougars versus the also 9-3 University of Utah. That'll be a good game. Utah still ranked in the top 22, at number 22. But they've been a lot higher so far this season, and they really look good for a portion of the season too. So that'll be a fun game.
Yeah, well, I'm a BYU fan, and the holy war, as they call it, the rivalry between BYU and Utah is just phenomenal. And unfortunately, they didn't get to play this year. But well, you say unfortunately, but then again, they are playing, so it is. It's a good thing, I think, definitely that they're playing. And there was a BYU and Utah actually played a basketball game a couple weeks ago, and there was a controversial moment where a BYU player got a nice little sucker punch in on a Utah player, and he was ejected from that game. And we'll just say that the rivalry was intensified, if that's a word. So the build up to this game is just huge. It's absolutely huge, and I'm really hoping for a good game. And for as high ranked as Utah was, they've struggled recently, or at least they were struggling towards the end of the season. That's why they dropped in the ranking. And BYU was playing pretty well towards the end of the season. So two pretty good teams, and it should be a good matchup. Now, of course, that's all the bowls for this Saturday. Of course, next week the bowls start to roll out during the week, but we will cover those in our next episode next week. The other big college football news, Garrett, was, of course, the Heisman.
The Heisman, I have to go ahead and say it. I was right. Said it last week. Derrick Henry, we're going to take that. You went with the underdog, Christian McCaffrey. But yeah, I think they got it right with going with Derrick Henry. He looked really good all season. He was kind of overshadowed by Leonard Fournette at first, and then he decided that it was his time to shine after LSU went on that downhill slide and really took it to the house. had a lot of carries, but turned out with a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns out of those carries.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, because he was so important to that Alabama team and their success this season, that's why he ended up winning the Heisman. On a personal level, I don't know. I still feel like Christian McCaffrey deserved to win the Heisman. I listened to Colin Cowherd over at Fox Sports on his show, and he made some really good points about how the Heisman shouldn't necessarily. He thinks the Heisman shouldn't just be about stats and what's happened on the field. He thinks they should consider what's off the field. And when you look at Christian McHenry, the dude goes to Stanford. I mean, that is a top-tier academic school, and he has a lot on his plate as far as schoolwork goes to also be balancing that with football. Mind you, also that he does so much for that Stanford Cardinal team. He set the record for, or at least he passed Barry Sanders for most all-purpose yards in the season. So, it was tough, but congratulations to Derrick Henry. Did you get to see Deshaun Watson? He's an excellent quarterback. He's been playing fantastic for Clemson, but I was, part of my naivety. He has a heck of a backstory. I don't know if you saw this, but they when they did a little feature on him, leading up to the announcement, he basically came from poverty basically to being blessed by a foundation that built his mother a home, and he was able to grow up with his mom in a home and able to work his way up and find himself in this role where he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best college football quarterback in the country. And good for him that he's now going back and volunteering in the same organization that built his mom the home. So he's a good guy, and really, really good quarterback, and good things from him in the future, I'm sure of it. I also want to note real fast, this is interesting, Garrett, the Keenan Reynolds, the Navy quarterback, we were just talking about how Navy beat Army over the weekend. There's a lot of people, and I was agreeing with them to an extent, that Keenan Reynolds was snubbed for the Heisman. Keenan Reynolds over the weekend set the record for most rushing touchdowns in Division I history. So, and if you watch the guy, he is an incredible athlete. If you watched him on Saturday against Army, now granted, Navy is they run that option package, and obviously he gets a lot of runs, but I mean he's just fast, he's strong, he makes guys miss, and he can also pass the ball. So I don't know, that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's tough just because the other three candidates were coming from power conferences between Alabama, Stanford, and Clemson. They were facing the top teams when Keenan Reynolds may not. But yeah, he was now that I'm looking at his rushing stats, he was really up there with. I mean, he had 1,200 yards, 21 touchdowns. That's crazy for a quarterback, and to be able to sling it around at the same time and lead your team to top 25 when you're not in one of those power conferences. Really good job by him. Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, but I mean, we've seen it for so long. Some people even say that the committee for playoff and everyone, they're biased towards power conferences, but I think it's hard not to be when you see like the team that Alabama puts forward every year and who they have to face, and then when Derrick Henry can go and put up just shy of 2,000 yards and have 23 touchdowns, averaging almost 6 yards a carry. I think it's just kind of hard to turn your attention away from that and not give him the awards. But I mean, you got to give credit to Keenan Reynolds. He did a great job this season for his team, and he'll be doing great things in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, congratulations to Derrick Henry on winning the Heisman. Well, I think that just about wraps up this episode of the B&O Sports Show. Hey, one quick thing here that's not football, a little bit of basketball. The Golden State Warriors losing their first game against the Milwaukee Bucks. So a little shout out to the Bucks for beating Steph Curry. Now, of course, I don't know, as far as the Warriors are concerned, I think this is I think it's probably a good thing that they lost a game because now they don't have that pressure riding their backs every time they go into a game. So that's just a little tidbit of other sports news. Garrett, as we conclude, do you have any last words?
Yes, I do have just a couple last words. I think probably the biggest NFL news of the entire week, the Oakland Raiders. They've had a tough couple games, but they're going to have a tough couple games coming up too, as their long snapper was placed on IR this week. So,
oh no.
Derek Carr, he's been struggling, but ultimately, even at the quarterback position, it's important. But I think the most important position, on that field is the long snapper. And John Kondo, he's going, he goes down, he snaps the ball, the punt is muffed and by Emmanuel Sanders, and he goes down and he fights for that ball and he gets the ball. He recovers the fumble. And then he comes up with an injured shoulder, and he's placed on IR. So, that's tough for him. Hey, it's tough for the team.
You put the team first. Got to get that football.
Yeah, we'll see how they can recover from that. They did sign Thomas Gafford. I honestly don't know who that is. But, unfortunate for the Raiders, that's all I got. I had to give him a shout-out. Long snappers are people, too.
That's right. That's a hashtag somewhere. All right. Well, we thank you for listening to this episode of the B&O Sports Show. As always, you can check our Twitter at BO Sports Show. We hope you've enjoyed. Thank you again for listening. And we hope you have a good day, and we will see you later.